A pleasant day to all. We are Group 1 and this is our Ignatian Circle. First, let me introduce to you to our members. I am Amedy Bejerano, the leader of the group, Galmer Jr, our group leader, and the rest of our members are Ronabelle Acenas, Alliah Carisma, Loraine Peralta, and Alliah Santocildes.
Today, we will be having a short conversation on how these specific values, namely creation and indifference, affect our lives and spirituality. We hope that through sharing our insights in this meeting, we could develop a better understanding of the said values and be further drawn to the teachings.
When we talk about creation, what comes into your mind, Aikin?
Actually, Amedy, from what I have learned in my formation program in senior high school, creation is about how God's creations serve as a reminder to us that God lives and that He exists. It also teaches us to be grateful for God's gifts and blessings.
For me, I remember the book of Genesis on how God created everything under 7 days. When I read the Bible as a kid, I found it fascinating how God can easily make the world we live into existence and made us, our form rather, from His likeness and image.
The land we step on, the air we breathe, everything, all of these came from God and it has a reason.
Yes, I can. According to the scriptures, God created humanity, us men and women, for the purpose of providing a place to dwell in mortality and prove ourselves worthy. We are alive to follow His commandments and show appreciation to His creations by nature.
You are right. As bearers of God's image, all people have the responsibility and privilege of caring for God's creation. In particular, the Ignatian teaching introduces us to this value, and we should be motivated by Scripture itself. We ought to love and care for the earth because it is God's work and we are the product. Putting this in mind means that we care for the most vulnerable people on the planet. Our love for God must be reflected in fulfilling the role He gave to humanity.
Indeed, as we share our love for His creation, we get closer to Him and we give as well our respect as stewards of His own making. With that being said, we came up with a summary of our initial understanding for this value. Next slide, please. We often define creation as the process of bringing something into existence. With this value, we believe that everything that existed in the universe and life originated from God Himself. Creation symbolizes God's love for us, and He created humankind in His image. So what He has said, He has given us the gift of life with the purpose, will, and desire of sharing our lives with Him. In Ignatius' reflection in his final spiritual exercise, he contemplates that God is always with us and that His creations will be everlasting. In this contemplation, one should show gratitude for how God blessed us with gifts of mind, heart, and spirit. The Ignatian spirituality conveys that we people can have the ability to find God in all things and value the presence of God in nature.
Thank you for that informative discourse, Amedy and Aikin. So hello everyone, I am Ronabelle, and let me introduce to you Galmer, who will be expounding about the value of creation in order for everyone to widen their understanding. So Galmer, before moving on to the next guide question, I would like to ask you, do you believe that creation is a manifestation of God's love for us?
Thank you for that wonderful question, Ronabelle. So, yes, I do believe that creation is a manifestation of God's love because God creates out of love. And all the things that we have right now in this world are given to us by God because He loves us.
Yes, I totally agree with you about that, Galmer. So do you also give importance to these creations that God has provided as a symbol of His love for us?
Yes, of course. I do give importance to these creations because it is given to us freely, and that's the reason why we live, because of the love of God.
That is absolutely true. Good to hear that from you, Galmer. To proceed for our second guide question, since you said earlier that you essentially give importance to God's creation, can you elaborate and expound concrete life experiences that you can relate to the value of creation?
Yeah, so let's start with the gift of family. So all of us are a recipient of God's gift, and that gift can be our family, friends, talents, abilities, or it may be our feelings. So all these gifts are a reflection of God's love. God creates out of love, and He sustains these gifts by His labor and love. So we are all creations of God, and it is given to us freely, generously, and unconditionally. A concrete example of God's gift is our family. God gave us our family because He loves us, just as how our family loves us. And we will experience God's love through our family. So we should give time to our family and take good care of them because they are God's creation. Our response to God's gift is to give back. We should give back the love that God gave us. And our response to God's love is to love in return. We love and serve our family as a reflection of God's love to us. So this will show others how God loves us through His creations. We offer back to God the gifts He gave us, and let us always put in mind that God's love and grace is enough for us. So there will be no greater gift than family, because we discover God and His creation because of our family. We should thank God with sincerity and honesty because all these gifts, including our family, are given to us freely and generously by God.
Thank you for that relatable and insightful discussion, Galmer.
So I'm glad to be able to hear those meaningful words from you, Rana and Galmer, and thank you so much for enlightening us on how and what concrete life experiences we can also relate creation to, right, Loraine?
Oh yes, Alliah, I totally agree with you.
So, hi everyone, I'm Alliah Allyson Carisma, and now we would also like to hear from Loraine and her insights. So, before we proceed to the main topic, why do you think we need to care for creation?
As human beings, we are called to protect people, the earth, and everything around us, living our faith in relationship with all of God's creation. We need to care for creation to show our respect for the Creator and contemplate on God's love, which is given to us so freely and generously.
Yes, so how do you look inside yourself and see how we are creation of God?
Through finding the essence of creation and finding God in all things. By doing so, I was able to look beneath myself and give acknowledgement to God for all the gifts, for the good health, life lessons that strengthen me, and failures that give me great gratitude for the creation in each of us, and seeing them as a reflection of God's love.
So very well said, Loraine, no? So only by expressing thanks to God for His creation can we have a natural response and reciprocate His love. So what areas in your life can you manifest creation?
Firstly, as a follower and as a child of God, my love for Him is manifested through attending worship services and contemplating for Him with sincerity, honesty, and conviction. Moreover, in my spiritual life, I also reflect more with the creation of God through finding God in all things. Just like how I see things and appreciate beautiful nature, the air I breathe, and the good life I am having right now, I can't seem to stop from thanking Him for all of His gifts, and I am called to love in return as I bow myself to be a steward of creation. Secondly, in my life as a human being who is fragile and soft, I can manifest creation by taking care of my health and myself as one of the creations of God. I want to thank God for the life He lent me, and I will continue to take care of myself to serve God and live a well-balanced life in my physical aspect. Lastly, as a student and in pursuing my career, I manifest creation by seeking a purpose in all of my hard works to glorify God's love.
I know deep in my heart I could only get the true satisfaction in studying, in accomplishing something, and in having worldly achievements by giving thanks to God and acknowledging His guidance, for I know I would achieve nothing without His love and creation. Thus, in my mental aspect, God gave me hope for continuing the life I had walked and helped me as I commit myself to use all of my capabilities in the manifestation of God's unconditional love.
So very nice and inspiring insights, Loraine. Thank you so much for that wonderful and enlightening discussion.
Let's now move on to the Ignatian value and principle, indifference. You know, Amedy, when I hear the word indifference, I picture a person treating another person in an interested way. This made me think as to why indifference is part of the Ignatian value and principle.
Actually, Aikin, same. It really was a mystery to me when I first learned about the inclusion of indifference in the values and principles of Ignatian spirituality.
Yeah, I know, right? But of course, I then learned why it's included. Why do you think so, Amedy?
Being indifferent means that you have the courage to let go. The beauty of it is that we get to see that what are things that we should focus on rather than being blinded on false identities, unnecessary whims, or immaterial things. In short, it is being dispassionate about what happens to our lives or to the things that we want to do as long as it is for the glory of God.
That's right. In addition to that, indifference helps us establish our inner freedom, which opens the door to God's desire and invitation. I will further explain it to you with this presentation. Ignatian indifference is the capacity to let go of what doesn't help to love God or love others, while staying engaged with what does. Indifference helps a person avoid committing the mistake of choosing something prejudicially. It allows us to distance ourselves from things to make our point of view of matters at hand broader. Saint Ignatius of Loyola is telling us to love everything that God has created, yet still distance ourselves from those He created for our inner freedom. This inner freedom is the way to God's desire, an invitation. Moreover, according to Spiritual Exercises 23, indifference helps a person decide whether to keep or set aside people, things, or matters, depending on whether it helps us to praise, reverence, and serve God. In short, indifference is the capacity of letting go of things that don't help a person love God or love others.
Wow, what a meaningful discussion you have there, Aikin and Amedy. So thank you for that. And hello everyone, I'm back. And again, I am Galmer. And now it is Ronabelle's turn to answer my questions, which she will also be discussing or expounding the value of indifference in order for everyone to know more about it. So Rona, before we start, I would like to ask you a question. So is it okay for you to let go of things, people, and experiences that hinders you from loving God? But these things, people, and experiences are also important to you.
Tough question you got there, Galmer. But to answer that question, letting go of such things and experiences, despite being important, can honestly be very difficult to do. However, the fact that it hinders me from loving God, I believe it is much more difficult to be far away from God due to being attached to such things rather than encountering the difficulty of letting go of such things that hinders me from loving God, from loving Him. So yes, even though it is challenging, I am okay and willing to let go of things, people, and experiences that hinders me from loving God despite them being important to me.
Wow, what a wonderful answer you have there, Rona. So, can you provide some concrete life experiences that you can relate to the value of indifference?
Next slide, please. So, the majority of us as students seek academic validation. Medals, honor student titles, or grades were the material things that we believed would give us value as people so that others would value us. Failure is how we characterize ourselves when we are unable to fulfill our goals. When we desire to accomplish something, we usually pray to God. And when things don't go the way we would like them to, or we are unable to achieve our goals, we tend to be disappointed in God because we think He didn't hear our prayers. Moreover, this does not entitle us to the label of failure or disappointment. But let us not forget that not everything goes as planned and that God always has better plans for us. God bestows talents on each and every one of us. It could be talent, skills, or character. These are gifts of creation that are the manifestation of God's love. God's love for us. We have become so engrossed in material possessions and earthly pleasures that we have neglected God's true calling for us. Hence, as we journey to God's kingdom, we should not focus on these earthly things, but rather share the blessings of creation and serve others as God's faithful stewards.
Wow, thank you for that brilliant and enlightening response to my question. I totally agree with you because of our worldly desires, we tend to blame God from all the negative things that happen to us. Despite of our failures, we must always keep in mind that God gave us gifts willingly, and it is on us on how we handle it, and let's not blame God of our failures because He gave us gifts out of His love. Thank you for that wonderful answer, Roma.
Thank you so much for those insights, Rona and Galmer. So, hi, I am Loraine Peralta. Wow, we have learned so much from today's discussion, right, Allyah?
So that is so true, Loraine. No, I have learned so much deeper from what was discussed by the previous members about creation and indifference.
I agree. So now, we will be hearing from Alliah Carisma in which areas in our life can we apply the values in difference. So Alliah, how do you think we can apply this value in our life?
So yes, thank you so much for that very warm introduction, Loraine. So since you have heard all about indifference and how we can relate to it, I will now discuss on how to manifest. So we can manifest the value in difference by always remembering that even if what we originally planned does not happen, it does not mean that things will not fall into place. Because being indifferent is knowing and understanding that life is not perfect. There will be times in which we want certain things to happen and plan it out, but then obstacles will come hindering it. However, we should always be grateful for opportunities that comes our way. We may feel like a failure sometimes, but we must know also that God loves us nonetheless. Oftentimes, no, as students, we strive to get and achieve the grades that fits our standards because we set that within ourselves. However, things are beyond our control, and sometimes we cannot avoid having lower grades than what we expected. So one should always remember that God gave us talents, and He would always love us even if we are imperfect. So no matter how imperfect we think we are, how unlovable we see ourselves, and how much of a failure we think we are, there will always be someone who supports us, loves us, and will always protect us unconditionally despite those imperfections that we see in ourselves.
Thank you so much for that very insightful discussion, Allyah. Surely we have learned a lot on how to apply this value and to always remember that God still loves us despite all the imperfections we think we have. Once again, we are Group 1 and I am very pleased for staying with us and for taking a part in our Ignatian circle about creation and indifference. That will be all for today. See you in our next presentation.